Hello, and welcome to another episode of Nutreco's Women in Science podcast series. The 11th of February is the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, a moment to focus on the huge steps women have made in carving out successful careers in science, but also acknowledging that there are still gender inequalities in the field. At Nutreco, we're committed to building diverse and inclusive teams. And in this podcast, we are shining a spotlight on women working in science at Nutreco, highlighting their career paths, their passions, motivations, scientific highlights, and their ultimate goals. I'm your host for this session. My name is Robyn, and I recently joined Nutreco from SHV, where I'm responsible globally for recruitment and diversity and inclusion. Our guest today is Leslie McKnight, Team Lead Validation Research in the R&D Department of Trouw Nutrition, which is the livestock feed business unit line of Nutreco. Leslie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Can you kick us off by telling us what you do? What is a Team Lead Validation Research?
Right. So I lead the validation research team in Canada, and we're part of the larger global validation team as part of the global R&D center in Trouw Nutrition. So we're a very small, but we're a mighty capable team. And validation research is really applied research. So we're looking at how Trouw products, programs, and services work under the local market conditions. So when you take them out of that R&D setting and bring them out kind of into the real world, I would say. So we test products at customer farms. We also work with universities and look at how our products work, mode of action, and just how they support customers.
So really how the products work in the field versus under lab conditions.
Exactly.
And do you also get to go to customers out in the field?
Yes, we do. Actually, we have a network of validation farms. And what those farms are, we work with our actual customers and we make investments to their farms to make them more fit for purpose for research. So we do some renovations, create experimental units so that we can run kind of controlled research in a commercial setting.
So then a win-win for both.
Exactly. Yeah.
How cool. And what is your background? How did you get into this industry?
Well, I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in southwestern Ontario, Canada, in a smaller community that was really surrounded by farming. And I really loved animals, and I liked math. So following a science pathway, I went to the University of Guelph thinking I'd be a veterinarian, but then I fell in love with nutrition after taking a nutrition course. So nutrition really combined animals and maths all into one discipline. So started to focus in on that. And in my bachelor's degree, I got a scholarship to work at a fish nutrition research lab. And then that was my exposure to research, and it brought everything together. So I pursued graduate studies. And I did a master's of science in biochemistry at the Memorial University in Newfoundland, and using pigs as a model for human disease. Then I came back to Ontario and worked as a clinical research coordinator in a surgery department. I liked that role, but wanted to get back to animal nutrition. So then I did a PhD in companion animal nutrition at University of Guelph. And it was really my PhD where I got exposed to industry, because my project was collaborating with, at that time, was Procter & Gamble Pet Care. And I like the collaborative environment of industry research. I like seeing how science was being, taken to the market. So I was really keen to find a job in industry, and that led me to Trouw.
So you started your career at Trouw Nutrition?
Yes. Yeah.
What roles have you done within Trouw Nutrition? How did you start your career?
Yeah, so I started at Trouw as a ruminant researcher. So I was working in the dairy team, and here in Canada. I've been based in Canada the whole time. But I was a researcher looking at new molecules to support the gut health of dairy cows, actually. And then I had the opportunity to move into swine nutrition researcher role. So I'm a little more comfortable with monogastric species. So I was kind of excited to take on a new challenge in the swine team. And then there's some changes that happened over here in Canada into the structure of the R&D team, where we were going to move towards more validation research, which is really close to the market and applied. So there's an opportunity as a team lead here. So.
And in your role now as team lead, I guess you combine the science, but also with managing people.
Exactly.
How have you
Yes.
experienced that?
It's been wonderful. Have a really great team of really capable people, and it's great to take on a leadership role. It's an opportunity for some career growth and personal development as well. Working with a team, and then in this role, I also do part of the research as well. So I get to keep my hand in the research, but also have those leadership development opportunity as well.
You said you're more comfortable with the monogastric species, and I'm curious why.
Well, I have more experience with them. So actually, I've worked with a lot of species, which, fish, chickens, poultry, ruminants, cats, and dogs. And I find there's a lot of similarities across the monogastric species in particular, because I have one stomach versus a cow that has four.
I'm really glad you clarified that because I
Yes.
was guessing. I'm not a scientist.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of complexities with dairy cows. I mean, monogastrics in their own right have complexities as well, but it's just something I understand a bit better. And having worked with a lot of different monogastric species, I can pick up on the similarities and differences between them. So it's interesting.
And I've learned something already today. I'm curious, of course, we're talking about women and girls in science. So I'm also curious. I can imagine it's quite a male dominated industry. Was it also male dominated when you were studying? And yeah, what challenges did you face?
Yeah, I mean, in my undergraduate, if I think back to my undergraduate, there was actually probably more women than men in that program. So I didn't see that, if anything, it was, yeah, more women. But as I moved on, into graduate school and in my PhD, I would say there was less women, or it was becoming a little bit more balanced. But I found what was interesting is the roles that seemed to be available for women, or a pathway for women, maybe wasn't as much of a straight line as it seemed for the men in the program. Um, I think maybe it's the academic setting. There wasn't very many female role models in animal science at the time that I was going to grad school. I was fortunate to have some really great mentors, but they were really few and far between, I would say, for female scientists, and especially female scientists that were also moms.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting. I'm glad you alluded to it. Yeah, do you have advice for working mothers? How did it change your career path?
Yeah, I mean, I went back to do my PhD as a mature student, and I had my first son in the first year of my program, and I defended my PhD pregnant with my second child. So it wasn't the typical student experience compared to the peers around me. Um, but I had some really good female mentorship. And I think that helped me a lot academically to see what other avenues that there were, or other opportunities out there. And I have a really supportive husband and great family and friend support network that, helped me immensely be able to tackle both challenges at the same time.
Do you have any words of wisdom from your mentors that you could share, or how is it that they really supported you?
Yeah, I think learning how to set boundaries and learning to say no to the nice to haves and focus on really what's essential to you, what you want to do, and your role. I think that that's really good advice. It can be uncomfortable sometimes, but it's necessary.
And I guess that advice is probably carried through your working career.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think another uh, maybe interesting piece of advice that I've had as well is to not feel discouraged if your interests aren't falling into a really clear, neat box or career pathway, right? So there's lots of different avenues and opportunities out there. So keep an open mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
What would you, if you had to point to a key achievement or scientific achievement, do you have something that stands out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a really diverse background. I've worked with a lot of different groups and peoples and disciplines. There's been a lot of successful projects along the way. If I had to do maybe snapshots, I would say, my master's research, developing a pig model for human disease and compensatory growth. On the clinical research side, so working as a clinical research coordinator, I got to look at how surgical interventions impact patient quality of life and the health economics of surgical procedures. That was a really great area to be involved in. My PhD research focused on a novel feed additive to promote the longevity of dogs and cats. And that was a really fascinating experience to see how feed additives can come to market and help your dog or cat. And then in Trouw, of course, I've got to work in so many diverse projects. It's so much fun. Novel feed additives for dairy cattle gut health. I've done work in chickens, looking at gut health products and programs in disease challenge situations. Lots of work in swine nutrition. Yeah, just lots of great experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating. How did you get into science? Like, is it in your family? Or it was just you liked maths?
I liked math and I liked animals, so I went to the University of Guelph, and I went into an animal biology program because that's where you go if you want to be a veterinarian. But I just loved nutrition, so I started to focus in on nutrition courses and started talking to the professors in those programs and saying, "Hey, what can I do after? Where can I go with this?" And use those connections to see what other opportunities were out there. But no, I mean, no one in my family is a scientist or went to grad school or anything like that. So,
No farmers in the family either.
well, actually, when I was born, my parents had a small horse farm. So, um, yeah, that's probably why I loved animals so much. My mom, spent some time on a horse farm when she was younger, and her and my father, yeah, loved horses. They used to just, raise horses and sell them, kind of a hobby farm there. But I think it built a love for animals for sure.
Yeah. And if you think about, so you've had a really diverse career up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see it going in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I really love animal nutrition. I love working with people. I love being able to have that leadership role with people and mentor people. So I think I'll continue on those experiences and finding ways, to work in that area. I think at Trouw, what really gets me up in the morning is the common purpose of feeding the future. Um, Everyone needs to eat. We need nutritious food. We need healthy animals. And that really gets me out of bed in the morning. So any careers or opportunities that keep me energized in that direction would be what I'm looking for.
Last question for you. Your key piece of advice for young women looking to go into a career in science?
Be true to yourself and your interests, whatever your interests are. And don't be discouraged if those interests, don't lead you in a straight line career pathway or a clear category. There's jobs that haven't even come to fruition. There's so many avenues to explore. So be true to yourself, have an open mind, and keep going.
Thank you. Leslie, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for the advice and for teaching me something today about animals.
Thank you.
For our listeners, this is the last English podcast that we have. But for our Spanish speakers, make sure you tune into our next episode, which will be recorded in Spanish to hear another story of one of our scientists from Nutreco.